and welcome to CDO's magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. On behalf of the CDO magazine, I have the pleasure of introducing another Canadian, Pascal Tyrrell, who is the Director of Data Science at the University of Toronto. Welcome, Pascal.
Thank you for having me, Robert. It's a pleasure being here.
Again, on behalf of CDO magazine, the pleasure is all ours. And for our listeners, Pascal, because we've got quite a large international readership or viewership, it'd be great if maybe you could, give a quick explanation of what your activities are at the, as the Director of Data Science at the University of Toronto. And then I'll do a follow-up question at the University of Toronto. But maybe if you can talk to what your activities are at the university first.
Sure, happy to do so. So I actually wear many hats, and so I'll talk about obviously the one where I'm the Director of Data Science in my department. So I'm in the Faculty of Medicine, and I'm more specifically, as you can see from my backdrop, I'm in the Department of Medical Imaging. And so the data I deal with is mostly medical images. So that's what we deal with. That's our currency. And my responsibility is helping all of our sites. So we have about 7 sites at the University of Toronto. So when I say site, I mean a hospital. And we have a lot of data obviously flowing through all those sites. And I'd say my primary responsibility is helping with research. So all of the images that we use for research, and of course, all the data that accompanies those images is something that we need to deal with in order to do the best research we can at the University of Toronto. So that's probably what I deal with most of the time. I'm also part of innovation. So I am part of, I run my own company in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So inevitably there's a lot of data there as well. And I deal with that. And I've also been in the medical device industry as well, where I've worked in data in that aspect as well in industry. So there's a little.
It looks like a man of many talents and a man of many hats as well, or a person. Sorry, I want to be politically correct as I can. Now, I was just doing a quick update. And again, for our listeners, a lot of listeners don't know this, that the University of Toronto is ranked 18th, that is 1/8 in the world, and second amongst North American public universities as identified by the Times Higher Education. So for our listeners, could you mention a little bit about, what the University of Toronto is? Because I was checking in there, it seems to also be a research university as well as a functional university. Maybe you can give a quick update to our listeners on that.
Sure, absolutely. In Canada, all universities are considered public. They're non-for-profit, and the government subsidizes the universities for education. University of Toronto is the largest university in Canada. As you said, it's well ranked in the world, which is fantastic. Also, we are a research university, so meaning that research is a primary function goal of the university. And we do extremely well at it. Inevitably, we teach as well, of course.
Right.
But research, there is definitely a priority for research in our university. And in terms of size, as I said, we are the biggest university in Canada and one of the largest universities in North America. So that's
A little bit about the University of Toronto, or U of T, it's affectionately known in the community. Now, when we were setting up our interview, you'd mentioned that with all the experience that you've done a lot of research and a lot of information gathering on the future of data analytics and how it's transforming organizations around analytics. So we're going to take a dive into that. So let me just kind of ask you right out of the gate. Why do you believe data analytics is so important in today's business?
I'm going to say that's a fairly easy question to answer, but maybe that's just because I'm immersed in it every day. But I see data analytics. What data analytics is to data, I see as language is to words. That's kind of an easy way for me to see it. because basically, without communication, without it, there would be no communication, right? It would be
Right.
very difficult and very basic. And I think that's the best way of looking at it. And so essentially, when you derive information from your data, and then, as you know, you get knowledge from your information and then wisdom from your knowledge,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
it requires a process and it requires a medium. And this is how I see data analytics and data. So essentially, without that process, you're not going to get along the flow of data to information to knowledge to wisdom, which everybody is looking for. That's probably the
So
easiest way for me to
yeah,
answer.
so thank you. And I know that when we were discussing back and forth the questions, but to be honest, I really didn't realize that you'd such a background in the medical imaging and collecting of data and things like that. So I'm going to
Mhm,
maybe come back and say, that's great, but
mhm,
how does this affect your world in what you're doing on the research? So why is it so important to your field, in the medical field, in the data you collect? Because I think that that's really something we'll dive into, and you'll hear me kind of ask the question, but I'll then say, "Great, that's a good question, but how does it affect you on your field?" So if you go back and answer that today as to why it's so important in your specific business, that would really help our listeners as well get an understanding of uh, how you leverage it within your day-to-day roles in the research side.
mhm. Sure. So sorry, would you like me to answer that now? I wasn't.
Yes, yes,
Oh yeah, okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
We're
No,
we're good.
absolutely.
We're good. It was just I realized that when you were doing it, there you've got such a vast amount of knowledge and experience, and you're talking about the imaging in the background. I'm going, I want to get into this. Like let's just crack open the nutshell and let's explore this if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. And actually for me, that's once again, that's an easy one. And the reason for that is medicine inevitably, as you know, it's important. It's everybody's health and taking
Yep.
care of everyone. But the challenge, of course, is trying to leverage all of the new discoveries in science and medicine in order and then put them into application and ultimately for patient outcomes, right? Improving patient outcomes. So what has happened over the last bunch of years now is building what's called the evidence pyramid. So it's just essentially trying to get to the pinnacle of what's the best evidence in order to implement new treatments or new methods or procedures in order to treat patients. And ultimately, what we need to do in order to build this pyramid is build it on, as what we would call as close to the truth as possible. We
Right.
can have a philosophical conversation about that. We will never know the truth, but we'll get there. We'll get as close as possible. And so that's where data analytics comes in, because what we're experiencing in medicine, which is a little bit behind, let's say marketing, right?
Right.
So all the Google, mouse clicks and whatnot that has made such an impact over the last 10 years. Medicine's always a little bit behind, right? So we're
Right.
just now being able to leverage all of this big data. It's kind of funny, big data was the word before, and then now
That's right.
it's like artificial intelligence, machine
Yeah,
learning,
it's
and then you
machine
want data.
learning, AI. Yeah, where were you?
Yeah,
That
right.
was so
So
last decade, right?
yeah,
So
like what happened to big data? I was just getting warmed up, and then it moved over.
yeah.
But essentially, that's what it is that we now have all of this data, and so data analytics is extremely important in that we need to be able to leverage what's in this data in order to once again go from data to information to knowledge and wisdom, which
Right.
ultimately, I guess, is kind of at the wisdom part is where you're applying it successfully. And in this case, it's not for revenue, it's for patient health, right? So for patient outcomes. So very, very important for us that the more data we have and the better we can, use that data or analyze that data, the quicker we get from what's called bench to bedside, right? Which
Right.
is, going from the science to right to treatment and impacting patients' health. So that's probably the easiest way to explain it. And I'm sure you're gonna have more questions that are gonna go to this, but
Uh,
it's the data integrity, how good the data is, all that's super important, right?
yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting pulling a list of questions for you, but because I understand that you're in a research university, you look at this, right? And this is your day in day out. You've got your own organization and companies you've got.
Yep.
So if I were to ask you, because there's where you're at today, and of course where you were a decade ago, and and where you're going. So let's look at where we're going for a minute, and we talk about you know data analytics, and if we were to look at the possibilities of changing the way we do business in the future, where do
Mhm.
you think data analytics is going? And maybe you might want to look at this from your particular industry within the hospital, within the medical area. And if you want to open it up broadly to other sectors, by all means. But maybe let's start with, where do you think the data analytics is going to take you in the medical field, and then open that up?
I mean, to be blunt, we are in a data age, and we're going to stay in it for a long time. So where's it going to take us? I think, as I said, in medicine, we're a little bit behind business in terms of making use of data, tracking data, all
Right.
that fun stuff, enterprise solutions and stuff. But our needs, our wants, our needs are the same. It's just a matter of what is your driver, right? So in business, you're always going to look at increasing revenue, decreasing your costs or your
The
loss,
commercial side. Yeah, yeah.
reducing risk. But for us, it's the same idea. It's just that we're not increasing revenue. We're going to be increasing patient outcomes. So meaning, like, improving patient outcomes is what we want to do, right? But that's kind of like our revenue. But it works exactly the same way in terms of driver. It's the same thing. And having efficiencies in healthcare is extremely important. So it's the same idea there once again, that being able to leverage data in order to run a more efficient hospital or clinical setting is very important, because, as you know, we have what's called scarcity of dollars for healthcare, meaning that we
Right.
don't have an unlimited budget. Just like in business, you
Yeah,
don't have an unlimited budget, although
yeah.
lovely if you did. But and so then, making good use of your money is very important, because it enables you to treat more patients and more effectively and on time, and all that fun stuff. So it doesn't, so moving forward, we're going to need, data analytics forever, essentially, and we just need more of it. So the biggest problem, and we see this in business as well, is, how do you actually, implement data analytics? How do you embrace, this, for some companies, this new thing of, data
Right.
driven, analytics? And that's where it's tricky, right? Is, how do you implement it successfully?
Pascal, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. You've been very gracious. We really appreciate it. I certainly hope that we'll get a chance to come back and talk maybe about your own business, the success of that, how that's going. But
Sure.
also, more important, I hope that we'll get a chance to come back and talk about what's happening at the University of Toronto, the future of machine learning, artificial intelligence, AI, and of course, data analytics, which you know so well. So thank you for your time, Pascal.
My pleasure.